Okay. So this is being recorded, so I'll start again. Thank you everyone for joining tonight and for being willing to be a part of this discussion. I wanted to host this discussion to address some of the things that are going on right now. We are all having a lot of feelings, and I guess the first thing that I want to say to people is that however you're feeling is valid. I think that it's absolutely normal to be concerned right now, to be worried about the people that you love, to be concerned about your own well-being, and also to have a desire to have some accurate information. And I'm certainly not a doctor, but we do have one on the panel tonight who is going to be our first speaker. So we're gonna just go right into the discussion. We're each going to talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll take some questions through the chat bar, or you can raise your hand, and we'll probably go till about 8:30 or so, depending on how things are going. If people have a lot of questions, we may go a little bit longer. But let's dive right in with the discussion. We're going to start with Dr. Jess Giamarino, who is an incredible naturopath and herbalist. She is the doctor who worked with my mom when my mom was sick and helped her to heal not only her cancer, but her entire body in the process. And so she's someone who I have absolute faith in. And she's also a member of the Penobscot Nation. And I want to introduce her to all of you. So Jess, why don't you go ahead and start?
All right, so the first place that I like to, oh, there's a little, okay, so the first place that I think is of utmost importance to start is in our traditional Penobscot, Anishinaabe, even Cherokee. I know a lot of us share the similar story, is that of the origin of disease and why the plants are there to heal us. So this story is really important in this time, and it's a really old story, and it's ever more important to understand this story today. So in this story, the people were living, I'm going to summarize it really quickly, but the gist of it is the people were living out of balance and in complete disregard to the natural world, and disrespecting the animals and all of life, and living out of balance. And the animals were getting really upset from the disrespect and the disregard, and they decided amongst themselves to be the ones to bring the people disease. And so they were really hurt by the people, and they decided to bring the people the illness. So today we believe that these illnesses are coming from the animals. A lot of their wild habitats are being disrespected. We know the disrespect that we're doing. And so even in the story, it tells of the disease, the specific diseases that the winged ones were bringing to the people. It's also in this story that the plants held council and decided to bring the healing to the people. But it is the people who have to give the offerings to the plants, to give the offerings to nature, to Mother Earth, but also to give our offerings and ask the animals for forgiveness. So it is my belief and my tradition, and based in our history, that in order to get the healing that we need, we have to be looking to the plants for our healing, because they are the ones who are going to heal us. And so for thousands of years, that's how we've survived here. Through all sorts of diseases, we've survived and persisted, and it was the plants that offered us the healing. And we need to be giving those offerings to the animals, asking for forgiveness, and working towards righting our wrongs to go back into living in balance. So that is really important for all of us to understand and work towards in our healing. So with that, I just want to give, I think I have like 10 minutes. So I want to give people information on how to empower themselves for our own bodies to be strong in this time, because we can see that the medical community is really struggling. They don't have answers, they don't have equipment, they don't have test kits, and they don't have any medicine available. But we know, as far as naturopathic physicians and herbalists and traditional medicine healers, that we have lots of tools and medicines to take care of ourselves and to work our way through any illness that we've encountered. And so the way to empower ourselves is to take this time not only to heal and mend our relationships with the natural world, but to also heal our bodies, heal our families, and work towards optimal wellness. Because when we have a virus coming at us, we need a strong constitution. So we need to build our qi in Chinese medicine, or to build our vital force in what we say in naturopathic medicine. So the stronger our vital force and the stronger our constitution, then the increase in likelihood we are to survive and live and thrive and to beat the virus and optimize our chances of survival. And so while we're home, because we all know I'm not going to get into the social distancing and the hygiene, we're all practicing that. But while we're home, what's not being said is what we can do to optimize our immune health. And so that's really the part of the mainstream conversation that is completely missing. And so what are some things that we can do? So we have to look as diet as a fundamental component of optimal wellness. And so our diet is first and foremost. So we are not supposed to be eating sugar, which weakens the immune system, and white flour and white products. That completely weakens our immune state. We need to be eating a whole foods diet, lots of vegetables and fruits, meats and beans, nuts and seeds. So I'm very much a whole foods proponent, as local as possible. And in the winter, all of our winter foods are really optimal for immune wellness. So our squashes, our pumpkins, all the orange carotenoid vegetables have all the vitamin A, which really helps our immune defenses, and especially of our mucosa lining and the support of our lungs and mucosa. Also, like the pumpkin seeds with high amounts of zinc. So we need to be optimizing our diet first and foremost. One thing that I really love is bone broths and bone marrow, because we know that all of our white blood cells, all of our immune cells actually are produced in our bone marrow. So our bone broths are really important to be making. And that is also goes back to our traditional story, not to waste any part of the animals. So when we're baking our chicken or using our steaks and using our bones, we don't throw those bones away. That is a part of the waste that the animals is disrespecting the animals. So with our traditional beliefs of using all parts of the animal in our utmost respect, those bone broths are the medicine that we need that's going to optimize our immune system. Also herbal teas. So just drinking teas right now can be really helpful for our immune system and our immune defense. And we know that there are so many herbal teas to be drinking, anywhere from white pine tea to rosehip tea, just general elderberry syrup. All of those herbs are important to increase our defenses. So our diet and our herbs, that's our main form of preventative medicine. Also, we need adequate sleep and exercise and air and sunlight. We know that our vitamin D is produced from the sun. A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D, so we need to be making sure our levels of vitamin D are optimal at this time. So and that goes into also our anxiety and our stress levels. So anxiety and stress and fear all weakens our immune system. So for a good immune strength and constitution, this is what we need to be working on, harmonizing our bodies with our environment. So we have lots of herbal medicine too for sleep and stress and cortisol, what we call adaptogens. So these herbs help our bodies adapt to stress. So we should be using all of these medicines and tools that we have to really get us through this time. So adaptogens, nervine herbs, sleep, stress support, meditation, relaxation, all of these practices that we could put into place for holistic wellness. As far as then, so that's our preventative medicine. And then we have are acute medicine. So if, you know, they say, I mean, the numbers can vary as far as what they're saying, but from what I understand, 40 to 80% of people are going to get the virus. So what we have is we need to optimize our constitution, empower ourselves, cook at home. Oh, that's the other thing. Prevention, using all our herbs and spices in our kitchen cabinet. So thyme, oregano, rosemary, sage, all of those herbs are really good antimicrobials. Actually, during the time of the Black Plague, they used those herbs in the famous Four Thieves formula, the sage, the rosemary, the thyme, and the oregano. So we can use these culinary herbs that we all have in our cabinets every day for our antimicrobial and for our defenses. So the Four Thieves, you can use some like apple cider vinegar and use the sage and the rosemary and the thyme, and you can let that sit for 2 weeks, and then you can be using that every day on your vegetables, on your salads. Another easy way at home is with garlic and onions and leeks and scallions to really optimize our immune system. A big herbal recipe, the fire cider, using the garlic and the onion and the horseradish and the turmeric and the hot peppers and the cayenne. So we can use that as a tonic to tonify and strengthen our immune system. So all of that is our good prevention, just our basic kitchen formulas, our kitchen herbs, our kitchen foods. And then if the virus does come, we are at a stronger state. And then we use all of our herbs and medicines and homeopathics and nutraceuticals to help fight the virus. So we have herbs for fever, herbs for coughs and lung congestion, antiviral herbs. So in the herbal world, we have you know, a whole host of herbal medicine that are antivirals. And this goes around the world. So no matter where you are in the world, we have our herbal medicine right around us. So here in the Northeast where I am, it's snowing today. So even in the midst of snow, we have all of our herbal medicine is right outside our door. So our cedar, our pine trees, our spruce trees, our hemlock trees, that's all of our medicine that we need. All the antivirals and immune support is right there. So no matter where you are in the world, we have these antivirals, we have the lung support, we have the congestion, the anti-inflammatories, the mucosal support, the fever support. So we can use our herbal medicine and our nutraceuticals and even our homeopathics to the best. We used to have homeopathic hospitals. In Germany, they use a lot of homeopathy and herbal medicine. And what we're finding is that our medical system is completely dysfunctional and in complete disarray. And what I believe we need to do is get back to hospitals that incorporate and integrate herbal medicine, that incorporate homeopathic remedies. And then they wouldn't be so desperate looking for medicine. They would have all of these tools accessible. So it is up to us at this point to really spread the word and empower and encourage each other to understand the plant world, and that these medicines are actually there to heal us, and they want us to use them to heal as well. And it's about giving our offerings, asking for their help, and they will be there to heal us. And so also we use water for healing, and we use smoke for healing, and smudge for healing and cleansing. But just as far as hydrotherapy, so hydrotherapy is an ancient, are you still there? My screen changed. But anyway, can you still hear me? I'll keep talking. You can hear me? Okay, so the hydrotherapy, I just want to touch about that because it's not only an ancient traditional medicine practice around the world, but it's also a naturopathic medical practice. We used to have hydrotherapy medical clinics as well, where you could actually go to the hospital and get your hydrotherapy treatments. So these tools need to be brought back. We don't need a big for-profit industry hospitalization, because hydrotherapy is free. Using water is a free tool that we can all use. So you don't have to go to a big clinic to do hydrotherapy. We can incorporate these right at home. Anywhere from steam inhalations with the herbs to fever treatments in our bathtubs. So that we can use water to heal as well. In naturopathic medicine, we have things called wet socks, but even just steam inhalations where you're getting the medicine directly into the sinus passageway, that medicine gets right into the lungs. And a lot of times too in traditional medicine, we'll also inhale that smoke to get the smoke right into the lungs too. So there's so many vast ways that we can use our medicines to help us heal. And so I just wanted to share all of those tools. I'm not sure how much time I have, but I don't want to take up all the time. So I think that's my 10 minutes anyway. And yeah, so we can go further and more in depth and answer questions too.
Hey, Jess, can you just talk about, just go through, answer 3 questions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about yarrow and bone set. Talk
Okay.
about the lung herbs and,
Sure.
you know, maybe some of the essential oils and stuff for the steaming.
Sure. So when we get a fever, there's this in modern conventional medicine, the idea they want to suppress the fever. Well, the fever is your natural wisdom of your body. It's your natural immune response. So that fever is actually your immune system working to fight the virus. So in naturopathic medicine, we're actually trained to work with a fever. So in all of conventional medicine, we see them suppressing symptoms with every disease. So in naturopathic medicine, we don't want to suppress the system. We want to work with the system. So rather than suppressing a fever with ibuprofen or Tylenol, we want to work with the fever. So what we do is we use what are called diaphoretic herbs. So they help open up the pores and induce a sweat. And so that's the way we work with a fever. So some really important diaphoretic herbs that can help to work with the fever. So yarrow is a really amazing, awesome herb for fever, and it's really safe for children, elderly, pregnant women. So the yarrow is my #1 diaphoretic herb to work with fever. The bone set is another native medicine. It's pretty well known for being used during the 1918 epidemic. It is also by the common name bone set. So it's where that deep fever, that really strong fever that goes deep to the bones, where you get that achy bone. So that's the specific indication for bone set. So, and then elderflower is another native plant that I really use as my fever medicine. So when I'm working with people with a fever, I'm using feverfew is another one actually, but I'm using yarrow, bone set, elderflower, feverfew. There's a lot of medicines, catnip. And I'm using my homeopathics too. So perhaps like gelsemium or eupatorium is bone set homeopathic. And so we can work with the fever. Sometimes we're doing hydrotherapy, a tepid bath, a cold compress to the head, making sure hydration is the key with the fever. And also monitoring so the fever doesn't get too high. We don't want a 103 or 104 fever. We want to make sure that if the fever breaks before it gets that high, and really monitoring that and working with the herbs and the medicines. So that's my first, what I'll do for fever. And then as this virus is really strong at going to the lungs, so as soon as the fever hits, or as soon as the first set of symptoms, we're really working our acute formulas for our lungs and our congestion. So some of my favorite herbs for lungs and congestion and supporting perhaps would be like mullein and colt's foot. I've been using a lot of usnea, the old man's beard, elecampane, osha, the bear root. So in my pharmacy, I have all of these medicines, and then we'll make like a really strong tonic, a really strong tincture combination. If you have them in dried herb form and tea, you're going to have to be drinking like 6 cups a day every 2 hours. With the tinctures, that's how we're dosing it, probably like 2 teaspoons every 2 hours, every 1 to 2 hours, to really make sure it doesn't create that pneumonia in the lungs. And then we can do the sinus inhalations. So sometimes we can use cedar as a sinus inhalation, or pines, or balsam fir is a really great sinus inhalation. But if we don't have access to that, some people use essential oils. So thyme is actually great for this type of virus because it can kill the envelope. It's an enveloped virus. And the thymol has been shown to be a really great antiviral. So we can use thyme essential oil or eucalyptus essential oil. And what we would do is just boil a pot of water and then add the essential oils and put a towel over our head. So we're inhaling all of that steam directly into our sinuses down into our lungs. So that's a great way to clean the lungs. Oh, another really important anti-inflammatory to help open up and breathing, not just the usnea, but the lobelia. In Chinese medicine, they're using the ephedra to really open up the lungs and to help with breathing. But in America, we don't have access to ephedra anymore because of the FDA. So perhaps the Indian tobacco, the lobelia, the usnea, the mullein. And then it sounds like it's a dry, so we really want to support the mucosal lining. So we're using all of those particular herbs. And then we might add into the formula some specific antiviral herbs. Licorice root is a really important antiviral. The elderflower, lomatium, chaparral, depending on where you live or what you have access to. The cedar is a really good antiviral. So there's lots of antiviral options. We might pick or choose. Monolaurin is a really great antiviral that I think would actually, sounds like it might work well against this virus. And then the other thing that I add in, because this can cause, from what I've read and what I understand, is that it can really cause lung damage, long-lasting lung damage, and perhaps fibrosis of the lungs and scar tissue. So one of my favorite supplements for that is N-acetylcysteine to really help protect the lungs, prevent the mucus, and prevent the lung fibrosis. And I also forgot our medicinal mushrooms. So there's so much in the natural world. So chaga really helps the lungs, but all of our immunomodulating mushrooms are really helpful as well, whether it's shiitake or reishi. Cordyceps is really specifically targeting the lungs. Chaga really specifically targets the lungs. So we can be drinking these two as immune modulatings, as strengthening herbs even now. Astragalus root is an important immune modulator, immune tonic. So these things we can incorporate now, and then at an acute situation, we really ramp up our treatment protocol to incorporate our fever, our cough, our congestion, our asthmatic breathing herbs with our antivirals and our hydrotherapy. So it's a whole encompassing treatment plan. So we're addressing diet, and we have everything on board. So we're using all of our tools. So these are some ways that naturopathic physicians are addressing, and herbalists are addressing this virus.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jess. I appreciate that. And we'll have questions after if people want to ask questions when we're through. And so next, I think we'll go to Leon Dunkley. And Leon is a friend of mine who I happened upon in Vermont, and is a UU minister and does a lot of transformational change work. And so we're not just talking about one aspect of what we're going through here. We want to talk about the fact that we are in real time adapting to a changing world, that our reality has radically changed very, very quickly. And so as we're moving through this, there are a lot of things that we're all dealing with. And so I wanted to have a real diverse group of people joining us for the discussion today, so that we can touch on different aspects of what it is that we're going through, and then how do we move forward into the future. So Leon, if you want to go ahead and jump in. You're muted. I'm going to unmute you. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leon Dunkley. I serve North Chapel, which is the Unitarian Universalist Church in Woodstock, Vermont. And I've been here for 3 years. I wanted to express my appreciation for what Jess just put out there. It was really a beautiful, rich set of options about wisdom and healing. My focus in my ministry is much more about our healings that we have in relationship, healings that we have with one another, with our sense of community, and with our sense of public life. I've been noticing a lot of fear in the air, some anger in the air, and a great polarity in the sort of in the social landscape. And part of what I try to do in my ministry, in my life, is try to remember those times where we worked well to knit ourselves together as a community. At our service just on Sunday, I forced my congregation to suffer through a recording that I had made with 3 friends in 1984, a musical recording of a song called Power. The opening words of Power were these: just give me the warm power of the sun, give me the steady flow of the waterfall, and give me the spirit of living things as they return to clay. Give me the restless power of the wind, and give me the comforting glow of a wood fire. And we started with that to try to rehearse, to try to remember that feeling that we have inside of ourselves when we're at peace, to try to bring the stress level in the public life and in our bodies down a little bit, to remember our joy and our laughter, so that we can really deeply engage with one another as we try to figure out how to address the magnitude of the challenge that we're facing. How do we do that honestly? How do we do that with integrity? How do we do that with peace, with loving, and with compassion? How are we wise about it? I suffer distress when there's a crisis in leadership, and when the public story doesn't seem to be strong enough to hold the public need. So one of the things that has broken my heart lately is that the public conversation has been mired with words and ideas that aren't serving us. I did a little research about the Spanish flu because it seemed an apt analogy for the for COVID-19. The Centers for Disease Control had a webinar that they did in 2018 that explored the history of that outbreak 100 years ago. So I wondered if there were analogies between 1918 and 2020 or 2019. And one of the things that I discovered was that the Spanish flu, of course, did not begin in Spain. You probably know that, but it began in Kansas. It began out west of Wichita in the American Midwest. And we call it the Spanish flu because it was Spain that had the courage to deal with it. It was Spain that had the courage to have the public conversation that led to the remedies that followed. So how do we enable a healthy public conversation around what we're facing? Fearlessly, but cautiously. How do we balance those two? How do we recognize the difference between how fear acts in my body and how grief acts in my body? How fear acts in public life, and how grief acts in public life. My sense is that when we separate our fear or learn how to become courageous, which doesn't mean that fear goes away, of course, but means that we know how to act courageously in the face of that fear, we'll be better able to deal with the public grief at the magnitude of the loss that has already happened, and at the magnitude of the loss that may be soon upon us. So how do we do that? What are the tools that we need? One of the things that I try to encourage inside of myself and inside of others is to get rid of those ideas that might be pulling us apart, to try to remember what an expression of abundance is in a time of challenge, and try to discourage the sort of scarcity model. We have the richness that we need. We have the wisdom that we need. We have the organization skills that we need. What we lack right now are initiatives around, the sort of physicality in the medical realm. How do we get the medicines to where they need to be? How do we get the masks and the protective clothing to where it needs to be? How do we prepare our hospitals and our medical centers for what's coming? So my prayer is, and my hope is, that we will find ways to reduce the rhetoric. The thing I'm avoiding saying, because I don't want to introduce it into this conversation, but I don't want to avoid it either, is that a PBS correspondent just recently asked someone in the White House, or just expressed that someone in the White House was referring to COVID-19 as the Chinese virus. You've heard that, right? Or as most vulgarly as Kung Flu. And asked if that was an appropriate means of speaking about what we're facing. And of course, I don't believe that it is. And the sooner we get past that, the better able we will be to address what's going on right now. We have major challenges because there are more incarcerated people in this country than anywhere else in the world. And in those settings, those people are most vulnerable to an outbreak of this nature. So we are asked right now to revisit both our systems of imprisonment and isolation in the public and legal realm, in the midst of our attention to take care of our health by physically isolating ourselves, not socially, but physically isolating ourselves from one another. So those are some of the larger challenges before us. And I'm sure that there are means of entering into those conversations wisely and bravely. And that is my deep prayer and offering today. So I thank you.
Thank you so much, Leon. I appreciate your words and your wisdom regarding the way that we talk about things, the way that we express our emotions, both privately and publicly, the way that that manifests on a social scale is so important for us to be thinking about right now, because all of our stuff is out there. And I've seen on social media people expressing things that have never been expressed publicly before. These are people who have tended to be fairly private and who are now expressing things in the public sphere and expressing them in ways that I believe to be totally out of character for them, because there's no place for them to unload what's going on within them. And so there's no sphere for healthy response to what's happening. So people are reacting in ways that are, I think, oftentimes out of character for them. And so I appreciate you framing the work that we have to do in regard to managing how we talk about what needs to be addressed in real ways, avoiding the vitriol and some of the toxicity that's been thrown around, avoiding the villainization of a population of people, and starting to think about how we engage in dialogue with one another. How can we be change makers in this process? I mean, that's really what it's about, right? How can we be change makers in this process in regard to how we interact with the natural world, but also how do we interact with one another? How do we engage important discussions? How do we enter into a social sphere, whether it's on social media or out in the commons, in a way that facilitates healing rather than more division? So I really appreciate what you had to offer. So thank you so much for that. And so next we're going to go to my my brother, Hawk. And And Hawk, you can unmute you. You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Hey, thank you. First, I want to tell everybody I love you all. I'm so grateful for you to be here and take the time out of your day. This is a very hard time for everybody. And so I'm just very grateful to be a part of this discussion. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to convene with all of you. So on the way. I want to touch on a couple of things that I've heard so far, because I want to come at this in an energy positive type of way. First, what Jess was saying about, something that I talk about too, is how everything that we need grows in the environments that we live in. So if we look at our planet as one giant ecosystem, which it is, and we're part of the ecosystem, then everything that we need in each environment that we live in is actually grows there or is there. Like the water collects all the minerals and nutrients you need to survive in that environment. If I get poison ivy, I'm going to go to jewelweed, which usually grows right near poison ivy. And so I think that one of the things that we've come away from is actually living with our environment. Most of our foods we're all eating the same foods. We're all eating drinking the same water. And it's very devastating for us. It's not a healthy way of living. So I really appreciate just for bringing that up, that we all have these types of medicines in our environments that we need to be looking towards. Secondly, I also wanted to talk about the underlying behaviors of what we're hearing people call this the Chinese virus, and I just want to correct the idea of how this virus came to be. So yes, it originating in China and come from the bats, but I want to ask why it came from the bats. I want to just address the deforestation issues that we're having and how we're not living in right relationship with the planet. We're not living in reciprocity. We're taking and taking and taking. So, why are these bats in contact with people? The farther we take, the more these animals are going to need to adapt. And so the bats are now nesting in places where people are living, where people really shouldn't be living. And then it becomes a pest problem, and then they do something about it. And stuff like this happens, human interaction with animals that we never should have been interacting with happens. And so I don't believe that it's a group of people. I believe that it's a capitalistic problem. I believe it's the way that we're living with the planet. It's the fact that we are just taking and taking and taking and mining every resource on this planet without living in reciprocity. And so what ends up happening is that our mother being the living being that she is, and the fact that we are just a microorganism on the body of the mother. If you look at yourself in a microscope and you see all of these microorganisms that live on you, imagine our mother being the same, right? And so when say you get a tick on you, this is a microorganism that's now causing damage to you, right? So you want to take it off and remove it and fix the problem. We are no longer living in reciprocity. We are becoming a disease on the planet as a people. And so when our mother gets sick, she's getting a fever, and she's going to come up with ways of healing herself. You know, so like we have these funguses that now the mother has created these funguses that eat plastic or eat nuclear material, and you know, she's very adaptable, and she will create things that'll fix the problem. But if we're the problem, then maybe COVID-19 is part of the solution. It's part of it's her medicine. You know, so right now it's a very mild antibiotic, right? Because when you get sick, sometimes you take these things, and if they're not strong enough, we'll try something stronger, and if that's not strong enough, we're going to try something stronger. So I believe that we're in the beginning stages of something that you know, if we don't learn our lesson on how we're living destructively with our mother, she'll come up with something new that might not be so forgiving. Now, we don't look at this as forgiving, but if she wanted to kill us, I think she would have done it. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about that. So I do look at this as like a warning, and that, you know, it's kind of good that people have to slow down and really take a look at how we're living in wrong relationship with the planet. One thing I've been saying to people is and I won't stay on this topic, but one thing I've been saying to people is sorry. Anyway, living in the right relationship is extremely important, and if we don't slow down and really assess how this capitalistic society has created this monster, then I think we have an opportunity now to sit back and rethink how we're living together. This virus is nonpartisan. This virus has no borders. This virus doesn't know anything about our differences that we are claiming to have. So again, it just proves that to me that our mother and that we are all part of this environment. We all need to stop with our separatist notions and realize that we have to live with the environment and be part of the ecosystem and not act like we're separate from it. And the last thing I wanted to say is about our energy. When I feel bad, I can really feel bad. When I'm miserable, I can bring myself into a depression that is so deep, like my whole body's drained, you know. And also, when I feel this way, I can make people around me feel this way. So when I'm angry and I'm spreading these rumors and these things, and I see all this craziness coming at me on the television, and it's affecting me because it's all negative, all this negative stuff, right? That will lower your immune system. That in and of itself can make you sick, right? So now anything else coming at you is just going to make you 10 times sicker. Okay. And also, you're affecting people around you. Your energy is, you are so powerful. You know, that's where our power comes from. It's not money. It's not all these fake things. Our power comes from our energy, right? So if you look at it this way, if you go into a room and you're happy, and you know, you can change the energy of the entire room just by walking in. And there might be somebody in that room that is so desperate, and 2 seconds before you walked into that room, that person wanted to hurt themselves, and you can put a smile on that person's face without knowing anything about that person, just by your energy entering that room. And I think, like, one of the things that we can do, even in isolation, is just make a connection with somebody. Making a connection with 1 or 2 people a day, you know, over the phone, how are you, just a how are you can change somebody completely. Somebody that was so miserable, so we don't know what's going on with people's lives. Their loved ones are separated from them. You know, this is a very hard time. And just one, it's not only going to help them, but it's going to help you, because you're going to feed off each other's energy. You know, I just want to bring that to the table and help us realize our own power in this too, of how we can get through this. You know, because if we are so in destitute and worried about money, and we're worried about all these different things, or am I going to have a house next month? Right now we have to worry about now, and we have to worry about getting through this, and on a much more spiritual level than what exists through the media and what we're hearing through the TV and through the fear mongering and the hate that's coming up. We have to live more in love and understanding that some things are out of our control, and any way that we can connect with people and community and uplift, that's very, very powerful, very powerful. And that in and of itself can help us stay healthy. So anyway, again, thank you. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you wonderful people. And I look forward to hearing what more people have to say.
Thank you, Hawk. And I just want to mention to folks that, I'm grateful to Hawk for being here with us, because he actually is going through some challenging times, because his wife is Brazilian and she's in Brazil right now and she can't get back. And so they're separated for an indefinite period of time right now. So it's very, very difficult for their family right now. So I appreciate you being present with us in the midst of all you're going through. So, so next, let's hear from Robert Shetterly. And as you may or may not know, Rob is the artist who has painted the series Americans Who Tell the Truth. He has done an incredible job of bringing stories into places where they would not have otherwise been. And I have seen incredible discussions facilitated as a result of Rob's paintings being present in a place where people are waking up to the contributions that others have made throughout history in ways that would not have been so evident through any other means. It's just been incredible for me to watch the power that opens up in these discussions as a result of Rob highlighting the truth-telling that people are doing and have done throughout history. So welcome, Rob. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Sherri. And thanks to the rest of you. I've been I don't know if your listeners or watchers know that we don't know each other for the most part. And I'm just so impressed listening to everyone talk. What they have said, the wisdom of it, the spirit of it, the articulateness of it. I was thinking, well, I don't know what I can really have to add to this, but I have a couple of things, I think. And one of them is that this would kind of enlarge a little bit on, or at least a different way of looking at what Hawk was just talking about. And as Sherri said, about the portrait painting, I started out 18 years ago making this series of portraits. I thought I'd make a few portraits, they'd end up in my basement, and that would be the end of it. But they're now about 250, and they travel, to schools and colleges and museums and libraries and community centers all over the country to hopefully do just what she says, get people thinking about what it really means to be a citizen, what it means to tell the truth in a public way, and have the courage to stand behind that. And it has, we have an education project here in Maine where I live, getting young people to stand up and engage in issues that most concern them and actually try to become solutionaries in those issues. But, and as Sherri said also, one of the things that has become possible because of the portraits is I get to tell the stories of the portraits, and why I would have painted a particular person, and what it is about their life and issue, which is worth considering, if not modeling one's character. And when all of you were talking earlier, I was thinking of Oren Lyons, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Oren. He's the faith keeper of the Onondaga tribe in upstate New York, an extraordinary and wise and gentle person. And one time I had a show of the paintings in Syracuse, and I asked the audience if there was somebody in that area whose portrait would be good to paint, and everybody's hand went up and said Oren Lyons. I didn't know Oren Lyons, but I immediately went to meet him. And one of the things that happened in that first meeting is he surprised me by saying, sort of out of nowhere, he said, when you people, meaning white people like me, when you people wrote your Constitution and separated church and state, I knew it was going to lead to disaster. He said, we knew. We knew it could only lead to disaster. And that we was a enormously large, all-encompassing we of centuries before and after the moment we were actually talking in. But I was kind of shocked, and I was still in this, the political mode of one of the best things we ever did as a country was separate church and state, so that we could have a secular government and nobody's dogmatic belief system could tell everybody else what to do. And I brought that up, and he said, no, it's not what I'm talking about. He said, Oren said, your deepest spirituality has to emanate from your deepest reality. And your deepest reality is nature. And so your deepest spirituality has to be, in direct relationship to that depth. And he said, we consider that relationship between nature and spirituality to be our church. And he said, you people separated the responsibility of all your institutions to that deep reality. And of course we had, come here in the mode of conquering nature and genocidal fury to make this land and its resources ours, and developed a series of systems which were designed to separate us from nature and separate everybody else from nature, and to ideally create a system that would keep doing that forever and keep expanding and make more profit. And well, we all know where that went. But I just thought that was so interesting. To think about that way of thinking about separating church and state, and what a mistake it could be if you change the terms slightly. So, I was thinking about this, the situation we're in now, and Hawk alluded to this, but I think that what's really going on is a way to look at this is an incredible opportunity. It's scary and it's sad. I mean, we're in a situation where our health, perhaps our survival, depends on the behavior of many, millions of other people we don't know, people we're not normally in contact with, people who are people we normally don't describe as our community. But now they're our community. And we have to be in a relationship, if we can, of trust, that they would trust us and we would trust them, and somehow acting together with a mindfulness of the common good, we will somehow weather what's going on. But beyond that, there's, the much bigger virus looming is climate. And this coronavirus seems to offer us an opportunity to, as the systems by which we normally live, the political systems, the transportation systems, the education systems, as they shut down, we all know that they desperately need to be restructured in a way that's consistent with living healthily and in harmony with this planet. And this is a moment, we look at those things. I mean, we've all, like what was it, maybe a year ago, began to really talk seriously about the Green New Deal. And, a lot of people from all across the political system, scoffed at the idea, oh, too expensive, too big, impossible, too visionary, all that sort of stuff. And of course, the reasons those people disapproved of it was because it would cut into the profit systems of the structures as they are now. So, this is an opportunity now with these systems breaking down to push really hard. And whenever we see this kind of cataclysm in terms of economy and corporate life and social life, there are those who realize that this is a moment to rebuild in a much healthier way. And there are those who think, who are scrambling like they are in Washington right now with these bills before Congress to make sure that the power systems don't change at all. That the people who control, the banking world and the corporate world and the economic world will come out of this perhaps even wealthier than they were before, because they will have structured systems that are more in their favor. So there's certainly an aspect of this that is, I listened carefully to what everybody else was saying and how important that is to be thinking about, how we're thinking about our own spiritual natures and how we're acting. But we also realize that this is a moment where we have to exert as much political power as we can too, because if we don't do that, we'll be even further estranged from nature and healthy living by the power structure as it is. And so I think that's the thing that worries me the most, whether people are willing to make that stand at this point and say, we're not going to allow, we need to come out of this, for instance, with some sort of a healthcare system, which is universal healthcare. We need to come out of this with a system that really cares for giving people dignity of good wages and good jobs, and wants that dignity to be built into the system rather than a system of winners and losers. And so that's what what I would like to see right now is, Bernie Sanders would say, this is a moment where we need a revolution. And this, I think that what's happening with the coronavirus clearly shows that that's true, because it touches on all these different ways by which we live and gives us, this very painful, but the next opportunity that comes like this might be a whole lot more painful, because of what's happening in the climate. It seemed to me the other day when I was saying about this corona thing is sort of like a neutron bomb. You remember what the idea of the neutron bomb, and people talked about, I don't know, when it was back in the 70s or something, this really, despicable idea of a bomb that could be dropped that would leave the infrastructure but kill the people. And this is sort of like that idea, where people are dying, but the infrastructure stays there, and then other people can come in and run it the way they want to run it, So it's up to us right now to, think, feel, and then also very strongly try to act differently and take on the power that we need to at this moment. I mean, I don't know if the rest of you know this, but one of the people I painted in my series is Sherri. And the quote that is on her painting, pertains to this moment very closely. She talks about people demanding rights. But she says that in order to demand a right, you have to take on the responsibility of creating the situation in the world where that right can exist. And so, we're all at this moment here where we would want to demand a lot, but we also have to take on the responsibility of creating the world where those demands can be met. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate your words as always. And, I think that we are at a very critical time. We're at a crossroads, and we are at a crossroads that prophecy has been warning us we would arrive at for a very long time. And indigenous peoples have been trying to communicate to the population that we are traveling on a road that is going to lead us to this point in time where we're either going to change our ways or we're going to dance ourselves right off the planet. And so in the book, I talk about Giwalk, the cannibal giant, just told the story about the first disease. We have these stories that help us to think about how do we live in right relationship with the rest of creation, because we often forget that we are the youngest species on the planet. And we have been very unruly, disrespectful, and disobedient children. And we have done more harm than any other species that has ever existed on planet Earth. And we have to really start coming around to the fact that if we don't change the way that we are living in relationship with one another and with the rest of creation, then we are no longer going to have the right to live. So when we talk about rights and responsibilities, we have to talk about the responsibilities that we have in order to keep our part of what we call a Kachila Gudawagan, our very first treaty, the treaty we made with the rest of creation that says, if we are going to live here with all of these privileges that we have, all of the abundance that Mother Earth offers to us, then we have to ensure that all other living beings have the same right to life that we're claiming for ourselves, and we have failed in that. We failed in that when we're sitting at a point where 1 million species is on the verge of extinction. And we are one of them. And I think what this coronavirus is teaching us is that it is time for us to realign our lives with the flow of life, because we have been out of alignment with the flow of life for a very long time. We have forgotten what it feels like to be connected to the natural world. We've forgotten what it feels like to go to the plant people and to ask those plant people for guidance in healing our bodies. What it's like to go to the animal people and to ask them, to guide us and to teach us how to live in relationship with one another. We've forgotten to go to our relatives, the rocks, who are the oldest ones on the planet, and the memories that they hold are the memories of all time on Mother Earth. And so when we start thinking about those things, we start thinking about our place within the scheme of creation. We start thinking about all of our elders, right? Because the trees are our elders, the plants are our elders, the soil is our elder, the water is our elder, the rocks are our elders. And it's been proven now over and over and over again. The trees communicate with one another. It's like, well, what have we been telling you for hundreds of years, right? That the natural world has ways of communicating not only with one another, but with us as well. And we've just forgotten that language, that mother tongue. So when we think about what does it mean to have a mother tongue, it's a language that is in alignment with the ultimate mother, with Mother Earth. And so our languages, which are thousands of years old, we consider those to be our mother tongue, because when we speak in those languages, the natural world, it shivers in recognition of hearing this language that we communicated with the natural world with for thousands and thousands of years. We need to relearn that language, that heart-based, soul-based language, that mother tongue, that allows us to communicate with the natural world. That doesn't mean you all have to go out and to learn one of our languages, but you need to learn your own ways of opening up those pathways of communication with the natural world, because that is the only thing that's going to save us as we're moving forward. And so part of the adaptation that we're talking about is reconnecting with the earth, putting your feet back into the soil, How many times in the last 6 months have you gone out and walked barefoot on the ground? And everybody says, oh my gosh, it was cold, right? I can't go out and I can't put my feet on the ground when it's cold. Every time I do it, I hear my grandmother using all 3 of my names, right? And telling me to get back in the house because I have to get my bare feet on the ground, no matter what day it is, right? I have to get my bare feet on the ground so that I can have that grounded connection with Mother Earth. And, you know, when we walk on the soil, the soil interprets what we need in our bodies and it responds to that. When we have a garden and we walk in our own garden, we walk in our own yard, medicinal plants start cropping up. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, geez, I got sick and then I realized that this plant had started growing in my yard and it was exactly what I needed to be well. And that's because the natural world responds to our needs in a really loving way. And it's time that we start reciprocating and start responding to the natural world in a real loving way. When we do start to respond to the natural world in a loving way, things are going to begin to shift dramatically. I mean, the most exciting thing about what's going on right now for me is how quickly the levels of pollution are dropping. It shows us what's possible, right? This is an opportunity for us to see what's possible if we change and how quickly that shift can come about. And so to me, that's just one of the most beautiful aspects of this. When I hear that waters are clearing out, when I hear that blue sky is showing in China for the first time in I don't know how many years, when I hear that the ozone levels have dramatically shifted. I go outside and the wind was blowing really, really hard the other night. And I went outside and I stood in that wind and I just said, you know, I hear you, Mother. I hear you. And I hear the fierceness in your cry. That you are telling us in no uncertain manner that we need to straighten up, right? I could feel all of the grandmothers in that wind and feel the fierceness and the power of that as the earth is trying to heal herself during this time. How the earth is trying to eradicate some of the toxicity and the poison that we have forced upon her. And when we start thinking about Mother Earth as a living being and start recognizing our interrelatedness with the rest of creation and start responding in a way that like we're taught, you know, how to be a good relative, right? That's a Skijinawe Bamosawagan, that's that indigenous way, is learning how to be a good relative. You know, thinking about that, Pasilda and Dilnabamuk, you know, that my life is for all of my relations and that every step that I take impacts my relations. And so now as we're arriving at this point where all of these prophecies are converging, where we know that depending on our very next steps, we're going to determine our course for the future. That's a lot of responsibility that we have on us. And so what we need to decide at this moment as we're adapting to this changing world and determining the path that we're going to take going forward is, do we want to continue to exist as a species on Mother Earth? Do we want to continue to exist and to provide our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren with the same privileged opportunity that we've had to live and to learn the things that life teaches us? You know, because we are here to grow and to learn. And so what we have to do in this moment is we have to spiritually and emotionally mature. I couldn't believe after 1 week looking on my news feed on Facebook and seeing all of the people who are saying, somebody send help, you know, like I can't take it anymore. It's like you haven't even begun to scratch the surface. Sit down, right? Take a breath. Really connect with yourself. I just got distracted over here because I can see Jillian and Russell, and there's a lot less hair, it seems like, going on over here. So I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and I got distracted by that for a minute. So how are you guys? Jillian and Russell are living on the land, and they have a beautiful farm where they bring people in and they teach them about that relationship with the natural world and how to live in balance. And so I'm glad that you guys are here tuned in tonight. It's good to see you. So as we're approaching this crossroads, what we need to be thinking about is something that I've been working on here, that Hawk is working on in his territory, that other friends are working on, you know, Hawk's friends in Brazil are working on, and that is returning to the land. And so I'm in the process of finding a spot to return to the land and to create an intentional community where we're living in harmonious, balanced relationship once again with the earth. And so Jess is going to be part of this process. There are others who are going to be part of this process. We're going to coordinate with what Hawk is doing. And so how do we get ourselves in a place where we are returning to the land? We need massive re-ruralization right now. What we need are enclaves all over the country where people are returning to the land, buying up all of this bankrupted farmland and building community, cooperative farms, cooperative medicinal garden growing, cooperative food forestry, restorative agriculture. We need to be moving in that direction. And so where we're heading in the future is toward a type of progress that brings us back in alignment with life, that moves us away from the illusion and the dishonesty and the misdirection that capitalism has led us down. Because we have been led down this path where everything is second to profit. Human lives are second to profit, right? The planet is second to profit. The lives of all of the other beings in the natural world, our water is second to profit. And so there are all of these things that are happening right now that are telling us that the way that we're moving, the way that we have been moving, we have this incredible pause, right? And I wrote in Sacred Instructions, I wrote about this birthing process that we are all in the midst of. What are we going to collectively birth? We get to choose what that is. We get to choose what we collectively birth. And so we're at this moment, this what's called the transition phase in our labor, right? There's like a pause. It's called transition. It was a word that at the time that I learned it, I wished I had never learned. But what happens after that is the gushing release of life entering into this world. And so we are in this moment of pause where we're being given the opportunity to catch our breath. Let's all take a breath together. I want to see your chests rise up. Your bellies fill up. Right? We have this opportunity to take a breath together. And so as we're taking this breath together, we have to think about what is the direction that we want to move in once we come out of this settled place, once we come out of this prayerful meditation, once we come out of this time that's giving us the opportunity to realign with the core of our humanity. Because one of the things that's happened to us is that the more we've moved away from the land, the further we've moved away from our humanity. The further we've gone away from the sources of our survival, right? The natural world is not a natural resource. It is not a resource. It is the source of our survival. The further we've moved away from those sources of our survival, the more we've forgotten our own innate humanity. The very thing that connects us, that umbilical cord that connects us to Mother Earth, we have forgotten that we are biological matter. We act like machines. We're moving all the time. We never stop, right? We have to think about productivity all the time. Productivity, what can we put out? What is the product that we're selling? We've forgotten who we are. And this is a moment for us to reclaim that memory, right? For us to remember ourselves, put ourselves back together, reconnect ourselves to the umbilical of life. And so this is a really beautiful and powerful opportunity for us to do that, not only by allowing ourselves to sink into the silence of the moment, but by staying home and thinking about other people. As we sit at home, we're caring for one another in a really powerful way. And people are complaining about this incredible opportunity that we have to show our love for one another by sitting still. But we're also showing our love for Mother Earth by sitting still. But as we're sitting still, let's start planning, how are we going to return to the earth? Because we can still put our feet on the earth every day. We can still go out there and we can put our hand down and we can touch Mother Earth and we can say, you know, put our hand on her pregnant belly and be there with her in this process of birthing ourselves anew. Right? So we can either be the coaches who are midwifing this birth, or we can remain stuck in the dark birth canal being squeezed by everything around us. I apologize. 2 of the 3 dogs are in the room with me right now. They really wanted to be a part of this discussion. So we get to decide what role we're going to play in this birthing process. And I think that it's really critically important for us to look at this as an opportunity rather than as a punishment. Sure, we've all been sent to our rooms, right? We've seen the memes on social media. Mother Earth has sent us all to our rooms to think about the ways that we've behaved. How long has it been since you've had an opportunity to just sit still and not have to be anywhere? Can we just let all the stuff go for the time being? And can we just be present in this moment to start thinking about, who do we really want to be in relationship to one another and in relationship to life? Do we want to strengthen the thread of life when we come out of this and reweave that umbilical cord so that our connection to Mother Earth is stronger on the other side of this? Do we want to be elevating our own vibrational frequency so that we can elevate the vibrational frequency of the planet, so that we can start moving all of us toward an evolutionary leap in consciousness where we once again remember our connectivity to one another? We can be using this time for all of those things. And then when we move beyond this time of pause, as things are reorganizing on really, huge macrocosmic levels, but within us, as we sit still, as we start to eat better food, as we start to take the medicines that we need, as we start to look to the plant medicine once again to heal and to nourish and sustain our bodies, we're being altered. We're being altered on really foundational levels. Our cells are being altered in this process of sitting still because You know, we're detaching from all of the madness that's out there. You know, what would happen if, when we weren't together on a webinar like this, what would happen if after dinner every night, people turned off their Wi-Fi and unplugged and sat together and read stories out loud, right? What would happen if people chose that time to really connect with people? You know, maybe you make a phone call and you talk to somebody over the phone. Maybe you start writing down all the things that you wish you could be saying to the people that you love that you haven't had the time to say. You know, what would happen if we really connected during this time? If all of us spent a little bit of time every single day working to elevate our vibrational frequency to the vibration of love or above. How powerful would that be for the planet? How powerful could that be? If we all worked during this time to really lift everything up. As Hawk said, that, you know, our energy matters. And when we are in a high vibrational frequency, our presence lifts up all of those around us. And so, Mister? I think Pig went back downstairs. Sorry about that. My daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter all are living here while they're finishing building their house. And so, they, you know, I'm just annoying mom to them. So there's not much respect for what I do outside of the home. But, you know, what a beautiful time this is. I was thinking the other day, I was sitting on the living room floor, and I was, yes, we can write letters of gratitude to those in our life, to those who need to know someone cares. That's beautiful. I mean, let me finish my thought, and then I'll go off on a tangent on that. But I was sitting on my living room floor the other day, and my granddaughter was standing in front of me, and she was poking me in the eye and saying, "I," and then touching my nose and saying, "No." And, you know, went through mouth and ear and hair and all those things. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, right now I was supposed to be in this different place, right? And what a juicy, beautiful moment I'm getting to have instead, being here on the living room floor with my granddaughter poking me in the eye. Like, what a gift, right? What an amazing gift. And so if we can start to find things to celebrate in these moments, then we can start lifting up, because all of the negativity that's being pushed out there, I'm guilty of it just like everybody else. I have a few opinions about our president, right? I have some opinions. I have some feelings about those things, what's going on. But I also see this as an opportunity for us to break free from one of the most crippling aspects of colonization, and that is childlike dependency on some other to solve our problem. And so we have this incredible opportunity to break free of that dependency and start taking charge of not only our own well-being, but the well-being of those around us. We've forgotten to be the keepers of our brothers and sisters. We farm everybody out for everything that they need. And so as we've forgotten to be the keepers of our brothers and sisters over time, we've forgotten to pay attention to the fact that nobody's keeping us. Who's keeping us? Right? And so if we want to have the kind of care that we're all lacking in this moment, guess what? We're going to have to become the caregivers. And how we show our care for one another during this time, you know, because let's be honest, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. You know, if this thing gets me, I don't know if I'll survive, but I do know that in the moment that I have right now, I am going to start focusing on everything that I can do to be a better, stronger, more powerful expression of love. that I am going to do what I can to speak truthfully but kindly, right? Because I've been failing in that myself. And so I'm challenging myself to be the person that I most want to be in this moment, because I recognize that if I do that, if I become the person I most want to be in this moment, then I'm actually going to be contributing to the elevation of the frequency of the entire planet. We are the co-creators of our universe. That bears a lot of responsibility, because we have collectively co-created the reality that we've been living in. And now it's time for us to grow up a little bit spiritually and emotionally, and also in relation to our understanding of our own innate power, and start co-creating the type of world that we actually want to inhabit. And so that's what I would like to ask all of you to do with me during the time that we're going to be going through this. And I'm gonna, I had, you know, my entire professional life has been canceled in the last 10 days. And so I've decided that I'm going to adapt and overcome, and I will be having some classes coming up on how do we actually move in that direction? How do we live in a time of prophecy and start moving in the direction of really becoming self-determined citizens? How do we start, once again, operating under a sense of core value that incorporates the beauty and the brilliance and the benefit of all life? And so I'll post that stuff later, but you know, I'm going to be actively working on building the world that I want to inhabit. I'm going to be putting my feet on the earth every single day. I'm going to be in gratitude for what Mother Earth has given us, for the kindness, the generosity, the patience that she has had with us for the last 200 years. Human beings in the last 150 years have done more damage to the planet than has been done in the millions of years before we arrived. Just in the last 150 years, we've done more damage to the planet than anything that's ever come before us. And so the fact that we've been grounded for, even if it ends up being 6 months, for doing 150 years worth of damage, that is more catastrophic than anything that's happened before we came, I think is just a blip on the radar in regard to our social and spiritual development. We are in this long arc of spiritual development where this time period is a blip on that arc. And so we need to behave like emotionally and spiritually mature beings, and arrive in this moment, in this place of pregnant pause, thinking about all the possibilities of birth. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can collectively work on together. And hopefully there will be more discussions like this that we can have with one another about different aspects of those things. So that as we're moving through this very challenging and difficult time, we're lifting each other up. We're holding one another together. We're cultivating and creating and breathing through the labor of this birthing together, so that what we create on the other side of this is beautiful, and it's strong, and it's sustainable. And so I have a lot of hope for this time right now, even though it's very difficult, even though there's a lot of uncertainty, even though I don't know if I'm going to come out on the other side of this, on this side of the dirt, or if I will once again become dirt, you know. And so one of the things that Hawk and I have talked about, which is, you know, just really profound to think about in regard to our lack of reciprocity, is the fact that when we die, we pump our body full of chemicals, and then we get stuck in a box, and then that box gets stuck in a cement box. So our bodies aren't even returning to the earth, right? I told a friend of mine one time when we were having lemonade with my grandfather on the porch that I wanted her to wrap me in birch bark and burn me on Oak Hill, which is the center of the reservation where I grew up. And my grandfather said, don't do that. You'll stink up the whole neighborhood. But, you know, we have to start thinking about reciprocity. We have to start thinking about, what are we giving back to the earth? What are we giving back to the water? What are we contributing to that long memory that the soil has? What are we contributing to the memory that the water has? How are we discussed in the conversations that are happening between the trees? These are the things we need to be thinking about during this time. And so I think that's what I want to share with you for now, and then we'll take some questions from some of you for a period of time, and then, you know, if there's interest, we'll do something like this again soon. So I'll open it up to questions. Who has a question? And there's a way for you to raise your hand, or you can just type your question in. I know it takes some time. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So, oh, Madge has a question. Okay, hold on. I'm going to unmute you, Madge, and you can ask your question. Okay, go ahead.
So this has just been an amazing presentation that you all have offered to us. And I really feel excited that you made the suggestion of having perhaps an ongoing class of this nature.
Yeah, I have lost, at this point in time, a little over a third of my annual income from canceled events. And so I'm going to start having classes online, I think, just so that I can continue to survive. Yeah, and so in addition to that, there will also be a number of other conversations like this that are just open to, you know, the public, because I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and it'll probably just be on a donation basis, whatever people can afford, and those who can afford. I'm still working on that, because I actually feel bad for trying to make a living now while everybody's suffering. So there are going to be a lot of things that I'm going to be offering online, just because, you know, we're here and let's build it. You know?
And by being in this particular mailing, we would receive information about that.
I'm not sure how you got the information. I don't know whose list you're on.
It was through Healthy Soils from Kat Buxton.
Okay. Well, Kat Buxton, however you got the information, let's make sure that it happens again. But what I can also do is I can give you all my email address right now, and I can add you to my mailing list. So if you want to get on, oh, she got it from Chris Wood. Okay, so if you want to get on my mailing list, you can email me. It's just sacredinstructions, all one word, lowercase, @gmail.com. So just shoot me an email, and I can put you on my mailing list to make sure that you're hearing about different events that are coming up.
Thank you.
Oh, and it was on Pachamama Alliance too. So, okay, anybody else have questions? You can put your hand up. Okay, Chris Wood. Hold on a second. Okay, Chris Wood, I'm gonna lower your hand and I'm gonna unmute you. Okay, Chris. Chris, I unmuted you, so you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. I want actually, Sherri, you sent something earlier today, which was the healing medicine in an email. And I'm just wondering, hearing juice and all that described, is there some way that we can get a compilation of what she said out to all the people on this list?
I don't see why not. And another thing is that this is going to be on my website, and we do have someone, Steph, who is going to do closed captioning. Is that true? Okay. And so it'll be available on my website with closed captioning. So there'll be a list. And what I can do is I can send the notes that I made from our last conversation, Jess, to you, and have you review that and add to it, and then maybe we can send it out. Or you already have something on your website, right? Hold on a minute, Jess. You're not unmuted. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I do have a summary page on my doctor page, and I was trying to upload it on here, but I'm not doing it fast enough. But I can email. I'm not sure how to I do have a summary page, a brief summary page already made on my Dr. Jess Marino on Facebook, but I can try to upload it still, or I can, if you have an email list, I can email it to you and you can forward it out.
Okay. Yep, that can happen. I'm reading a question here from Kendall. She's reading Sacred Instructions, just read the chapter about the cannibal giant. Okay, is there a vegetarian alternative to bone broth? Jess?
So the bone marrow is actually where you get all your white blood cells, but veggie broths are very healthful too and have a lot of nutrients and high minerals, and the broth itself can be really healing. So if you are vegetarian or vegan, you can do vegetable broths. But really, as far as the white blood cells actually coming from the bone marrow.
Thank you. And the other part of your question, Kendall, I think that right now we have to provide something else I talk about in the book, and I talk about a lot when I'm speaking. And I'm apologizing because I have terrible lighting here, so I look like a ghost. But also my glasses are reflecting, and I know that it's annoying, but there's not much I can do about that. And so we have to stand in the flow of harm in regard to climate change. We really have to be standing in the flow of harm, because none of the other problems that we are facing are going to have the opportunity to be resolved if we don't solve the climate issue. Every single person needs to be protecting the water right now. Absolutely critical. Water is the number one thing that we should all be in alignment on protecting. And so I think that if you're going to step up, that you certainly can't do that in any frontline sort of way at the moment, just because it would be detrimental to the safety of others right now for us to be out and about. But I think that you certainly can do things within your own community to be making sure that while you have this downtime, research what are the water catchment laws in your area. What are the water protection laws? Who makes the decisions about what happens to the water? Is there an ordinance in your community that allows for the extraction of water from your ground source and allows it to be shipped someplace else? Those are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about. So that's one way that you can be involved in activism right now. But I also think that it's a time for us to really be thinking about who we want to be going forward, and how do we shape ourselves to the greatest degree possible into that person. And so if you think about what you want to be involved in regard to activism when you come out of this, when we come out of this time, take the time as you're sitting in pause to really research every aspect of that. Most states in the US have water catchment laws that prevent people, if it really comes down to it, and if we don't really change course, it's going to, where it will be against the law for us, or it is against the law for us, it's just not strictly enforced, to catch water in a barrel in our own backyard. And so, you know, these are the types of things that we need to be becoming aware of. So right now, as you have this time, do some research on the issues that are that most strongly build fire in your heart and your gut, because that's your work. And so wherever the fire is in your gut and in your heart, that's your work. So do some research on that to figure out what it is that you need to know about that. Contact people who are working on those things. Find out what the resources are for information and education that you need to find in order to be able to move forward in that way. How do we spread true information when a lot of distruth is spreading? I think that, you know, I just don't seem to have any trouble telling the truth, whether people like to hear it or not. And I think that there's always a way for you to just tell the truth with kindness and love. And you can say, you know, well, we disagree, and this is what you believe, and this is what I believe to be true, and this is why I believe it to be true. And you can relate it to yourself in a personal way. If you can relate a truth to your own life and tell a story about how you came by that truth, people are going to be more willing to listen to you than if you just are arguing with them and trying to convince them that they're wrong. And so I think that one of the best ways to tell the truth is to, how do you relate that truth to yourself? How do you relate that truth to your own process of evolution of your own consciousness? And how can you share that story of that evolution with somebody, and how you arrived at a place of truth? And, we can't be upset with people who are in the dark. And so all we can do is plant seeds. And so you don't want to throw your seed on rocky ground, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with planting a few seeds in the dark, because when the lights start shining, those seeds are going to grow. And so, be a planter of seeds right now, and a shiner of light. I think that's really what this time is really all about, because the more we can uplift, the more that we can raise our own vibrational frequency, because form is created by vibration and frequency. And so if we don't like the form that we're seeing, we need to stop vibrating with the frequency that's creating that form, and start vibrating in a frequency that's creating what we want to see out in the world. We want to see a more loving world, then we have to vibrate at a more loving, higher elevated frequency. Okay, I'm going to go to Kathy. I'm going to unmute you, Kathy, and you can ask your question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sherri and Hawk and Joss, and all of your speaking is really, really inspirational. My question is specifically about teaching the younger generation, because coincidentally, I was actually set to open up a farm and nature program last week. Was my launch. So that didn't really happen. And so now, of course, I'm forced to look at, okay, how to reach when the whole point of a farm and nature program is tangible, to physically touch and get in and connect with each other and the Mother Earth. And so how do you do that virtually? just wondering if anybody has any ideas.
I always have all kinds of ideas, but I'm going to ask if any of the other speakers want to address this first, because I don't want to just be answering all the questions.
Hmm.
Anybody else have anything they want to share? Hawk? You have to unmute yourself.
There we go. So I have some thoughts on it. I mean, we're all talking about how we have to get outside, and you can hear me? Okay. And we have these virtual platforms too, and so we can kind of like take advantage of that. Combine the two. You go outside, they go outside. You can still host these classes virtually. And go with some basics, because we want to get these youth touching the ground like Sherri was saying. We want to get our feet on the ground every day if we can. And so if these students were meant to be with you anyway, let's figure out ways how they can do it virtually and get them. And I realize that unfortunately not everybody has a yard that they can go to, but the ones that do, that can participate in that way, that might be a good way to do it. Just a thought.
And one thing that I'm thinking of, which I think would be really cool, is for all of those young people, is to challenge them to identify, they can look it up online, what is a wild growing medicinal plant in the region that they live in, and can they go outside and find it and then share it and share its medicinal properties with others that were supposed to be part of that group online. There's just all kinds of ways that you can get really creative with it and introduce them to the land, even though they're not farming. What are different kinds of soils, and can you identify some of those different kinds of soils in the area where you're living? What are some of the nutrients that we need in the soils? How do we nourish the soil, and then turn that into, I have on my website the Cultivation of Warriors workshop, and there's all these metaphors for cultivating the soil on there that you could use to have it be a much broader teaching. Jess, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'm sorry, I was busy trying to upload this file. She was
supposed to be starting a farm and with all of these youth, and she wasn't able to do it because now we're all in quarantine, for us, or voluntary self-isolation, social distancing, whatever you want to call it. We're all home. And some of us who are fortunate enough to have a home are home. Let's not forget those who don't. And how can she do that virtually and still have it be meaningful?
I know. I just went on a virtual herb walk. Someone else trying to keep his job, and he was supposed to be hosting an herb walk for the university. And so he did a virtual herb walk and a virtual, I have fear about this though, of this new virtual reality, and trying to step away from it and disconnect. Everything, homeschooling, everything is now virtual, connecting with people, the webinars, everything is virtual now. So I have hesitation of going virtual right now and trying to step away and connect. So I think it's a fine line, and I hate for us all to just jump on virtual reality here. And I think someone posted about 5G and, Amazon hiring and all of these multinational corporations, Facebook making all this money, Zoom. You can imagine they're really happy with us, right now. So I have hesitation with doing everything virtual like this, trying to step out and connect for ourselves. I guess there's definitely benefit for the youth who are really struggling right now. It's like, You know, I'm a mother of a 10-year-old, so we've always been trying to disconnect at home, and now we're forced even more to go online with his homeschooling now. And so I think it's important for them to get outside. So if you do have to connect virtually for the time being, to go ahead and to really promote them getting outdoors and maybe finding plants in their own yard, or, you know, making fun activities where, you know, you talk about oak tree online, but then they need to go find the oak tree. So they're connecting more with the earth and getting outside. So I think there's got to be a really important balance with, you know, what we're doing virtually. And so maybe those are some suggestions, you know.
Okay, thank you, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see.
Sherri, I have to jump off. I have an opportunity to talk with Sarah.
Okay.
But I wanted to thank everybody for being here again. I love you all. I'd love to be involved in more of what's going on, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Hawk.
Thank you.
I have to go too. I got to go put my young one to bed, who's waiting up for me tonight.
Okay,
So,
well, we are over time, so and Leon also has to go, and so I don't know if Rob is still on here somewhere, but oh yeah, he is. So I guess if anyone has a pressing question for me or for Rob before we jump off, you can ask it, and otherwise we will have this posted on my website. My website is sacredinstructions.life. And my email address, as I said before, was sacredinstructions@gmail.com. So if you have a question that you're really wanting to know the answer to, then email it to me, and then, you know, I'll respond because I'm home. So, which is kind of miraculous. To get me to respond to an email within a timely manner is nothing short of miraculous. And so I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Jess. I want to thank Rob. I want to thank Leon. I want to thank Hawk. And I want to thank all of you who have taken the time to be here with us this evening to have a discussion with one another. You know, we can't be together breath to breath, but we can be together eye to eye and heart to heart. And so let's continue holding each other in our hearts and thinking about the world that we want to create together. And then let's do that. Let's build it. Okay. Thank you all. Have a beautiful night. Thank you. Okay.